I'm pleased to welcome now to the studio Christopher Weissberg. Hello to you. You are a former MP. You were serving in the recently dissolved Parliament for the Renaissance Party, for the President's party. You were representing Americans living abroad in North America, French people living abroad, in North America. And I just want to explain briefly to our viewers the kind of rather unusual role you're playing in this election, because you are what's known as a substitute, which means that you are, if the MP who wins and then they, for example, join the government, you would go in their place. It's a quirk of the system. I wanted to clarify there. But let's talk about the big story of the day, and that is candidates dropping out, or indeed not dropping out, to avoid splitting the vote and preventing the far right reaching power. Are enough people in your bloc, the centrist bloc, dropping out?
Yeah, I think it's very clear. It's a no-brainer. I know that some people, like Edouard Philippe or Bruno Le Maire, had, and I regret it, a more balanced approach, saying that they shouldn't vote neither for the National Front or for La France Insoumise. But the official position called by the president himself and the prime minister was very clear, and it's a no-brainer for me either. We have to drop out to avoid the catastrophe of having Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella governing the country.
Okay, so your view is very clear. Yeah. There are people in your party who are in that third place in the first round. They should drop out. But it doesn't seem that across the board, everybody in your party agrees with you. I mean, I looked at the latest stats before we came on air just now. 127 candidates from the left, not from your bloc, have stood down, and just 75 from the presidential camp. So why are not more of your people within your party agreeing with you? Why are they staying in place, even though it's going to split the vote?
I don't think there's that many. Of course, there are more people.
There are 75.
Because we're in less district, we're empowered to stay and to keep up in the election, because we didn't win as many districts as the left did. But if you look, there was this morning. One of our ministers who was thinking of staying in the race finally dropped out. And I think that in most cases, almost every cases now, we are about to have candidates that withdraw in order to have this famous Front Républicain, which is the Republican front, the Democratic shield against the extreme right. So it seems that from what you're saying, that the left is doing it more than us, but I think in every cases I've been looking for, almost everyone is decided to drop out.
Okay, that said, though, both your Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, and the President, Emmanuel Macron, have warned during the election campaign of what they called extremes on both sides. Extremes, of course, on the far right in the form of the National Rally, but also they talked about an extreme on the far left, figures like Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Is it really fair, in your view, to compare those two, to suggest that they are somehow equal in their extremity, given the history of the National Rally in France?
No, I agree. And I always was very careful to not compare both extremes. But for the past 2 years, the extreme left and Jean-Luc Mélenchon and some of his troops have been very ambiguous about the role of democracy. Very tough stances on just their personal behaviors in the institutions, trying to make a mess about everything. Having very strong stances about what happened in Israel, and a very unclear message about anti-Semitism.
You felt he lent into anti-Semitism a little bit?
Well, some of them did, and I was able to express and say that I think most of the candidates in La France Insoumise are very respectable people who have different beliefs and different thoughts about politics than I do, but respect the essential things and essential values. But some of them, I'm sorry to say, have been extremely aggressive and had some anti-Semitic thoughts and sayings. It would be strange for your auditors to hear about that, but there were a few people that had anti-Semitic messages on Twitter that were very clear. Those people, for me, it would be very difficult to vote for them. So what I mean is that the message is clear. We have to drop out. Extreme left is not actually in capacity to win this election. They're not. Jean-Luc Mélenchon has no chances to become prime minister. So today, where we stand now, the absolute objective for us is to avoid an extreme right government. But when a week ago we were saying that the extreme left and the extreme right both didn't stand for the same values than we did, I could understand that. And lots of our constituents, when we went campaigning for the past 10 days, and many people who are very respectable were saying to us that they would be very dubious about voting for a candidate on the extreme left because of what they've been doing for the past 2 years.
Right, but it's fascinating what you say there, and there are Jewish intellectuals in France who have sort of echoed that challenge, saying, of course, they know the history of the National Rally in France, they know its racist, anti-Semitic roots. They are, like you, not happy with some of the language of individuals from that far-left party, La France Insoumise. So what do voters do if they are in a constituency where they have a far-left LFI candidate on the one hand, the National Rally on the other? Where do they go? Those people are politically homeless, aren't they?
They should vote against the most likely scenario of next week, which is having an extreme right government, because the National Front has an absolute majority. So they should vote against the extreme right for an extreme left candidate.
Even if you think that candidate is anti-Semitic.
And that's where I have a slightly different opinion, is that some of them, which have had racist talks, and there are just a few, but those, it would be, I would understand that, it's hard for some people, for someone who's been attacked, to vote for some of them. But it's very few exceptions, and in most of the cases, this question will not raise.
Right, there's lots more I want to ask you, but before I come back to you, I want to go to the headquarters of the Green Party now, actually, and speak to James Andre, our reporter, who's standing by for us there. James, good to speak to you this afternoon. Can you tell us what's the latest with the Greens and indeed with that broader leftist alliance this Tuesday?
Well, as you know, we're closing into the time limit to step down in various elections across France, and what we have here is that indeed over 126 candidates from this left-wing alliance have stepped down over the past couple of days. That's bringing the total to 208, and yes, of course, what people are expecting here is to see more candidates from the Together bloc, the presidential bloc, to step down. Roughly 75 have done so at this stage. So earlier on we were talking to Marine Tondelier, and I said, well, is it all done? And she said, well, no, there is still some negotiating, some horse trading that's being done behind the scenes, with some people having a tough job stepping down. She did say, even personally for a lot of candidates, it's difficult to just let go and step down. It's not an easy thing to do. And then saying also, a lot are saying, right, yes, I will step down if such and such in another place also does step down. But in Marine Tondelier we spoke to, saying that she sees that there is a possibility of, a slim possibility of indeed a left-wing majority in the upcoming parliament after Sunday's elections. So she was saying we don't want to raise expectations too high, but with a good campaign we could get a good result.
James, we know who the far-right candidate would be should they do the best in this election. It's going to be Jordan Bardella. They've been very clear about that. On the left, we don't have that same clarity, do we?
No, we don't. And indeed, what the left is talking about is a so-called third round. In a sense, they're saying that their decision is that the party, there are four parties that compose this left-wing alliance. You have the Socialist Party, the Green Party, the Communists, and the France Unbowed hard right party led by Jean-Luc Mélenchon. What they're saying, whoever gets the largest amount of seats should be, the Prime Minister should be chosen within the ranks of that specific party. Now, indeed, there is a debate that is planned on one of the channels here in France. We know that Jordan Bardella will be on that debate, Gabriel Attal as well. But when it comes to the left, well, the decision of the group was that it would be Marine Tondelier, the head of the Greens. But Jordan Bardella is refusing that debate and saying that he would like to debate with Jean-Luc Mélenchon. This is what Marine Tondelier had to say about that. Let's listen to her.
From what I understand, Gabriel Attal isn't against this debate with me, but Jordan Bardella is against it with his entire being. Is he scared of us, of ecology, of women, all of the above? I don't know. I do know how they put their influence on a city, their good sides and their bad, their weaknesses. I know all of it, and I think that scares them. That's how it is. In democracies, we don't choose who we debate with. The format is imposed. You can also tell why they want to debate Jean-Luc Mélenchon. They want to elevate him because it serves their narrative.
Voilà, ça sert leur récit.
So indeed, Jordan Bardella wants to discuss with Jean-Luc Mélenchon as part of a strategy. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, despite getting 22% of the first round of the previous presidential election, is a very divisive figure here in France. A lot of moderate, left-leaning voters really don't want to see him in Matignon, the Prime Minister Palace. So for now, the left-wing alliance is indeed sticking to its guns. And indeed, Marine Tondelier was telling me earlier on, she said, the decision is made. It will not be Jean-Luc Mélenchon. But still, this strategy is very clear on in the extreme right camp. And Jordan Bardella, for now, has not accepted to debate with Marine Tondelier.
James Andre, outside the headquarters of the Green Party. Thanks very much indeed. Well, still with me in the studio is Christopher Weissberg. And look, I'd like to talk about your alliance, the Centrist Alliance. We've heard there about kind of the machinations on the left and on the right today. What's happened to the centre? In your own vote in North America, you are ahead, but with a smaller margin than you were in the 2022 elections. But across the board, ensemble, your bloc has been decimated. What's gone so wrong?
Well, it makes sense. We've been in power for 7 years. What usually happens, look at what's going to happen to the Tories in a few days from now. They're going to have an alternative from the left, and this is democracy. And what's I think is terrible is that instead of having a very strong left alliance who could take over us, there is this extreme right front who could win. So we have, when you look at those elections, I was almost a little surprised that we did that well. 20%, and in some cases we are second in a lot of districts. And for me, the most important thing today is how do we avoid a disaster? Let me bluntly honest. We are here on a public funded channel. There are many chances that if the extreme right wins this election, this channel doesn't exist anymore.
They want to privatize public media.
Want to
they have said
privatize
that before. Yeah.
And you imagine what happens then. You have our Rupert Murdoch, for your American and British listeners, we have one like him, Mr. Bolloré, who's been buying every channels, who's been trying to keep this coalition between the right and the extreme right for the past few days. Those are the things that matters.
And clearly you see the situation as grave, but if I may, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the decision of your own leader, of the president, to call this snap early election.
And I've said personally several times that I think it was a mistake. I think it was a mistake. I didn't understand why and how he could do this right after what was a political loss after the European elections. We are where we are, and I've always thought to myself that I will go until the end of this election to try to avoid a disaster, and this is our common responsibility. Saying that people from the left or people from our board are going to drop out because there is an ultimate threat in front of us. That's what's at stake.
You sound to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you feel politically homeless now? Do you feel like you're not happy with what the president, the leader of your party, the decision he's taken? Where does this leave you now as a former MP?
I know exactly where I am. I've never questioned. We had an immigration law about 6 months ago, where in the first draft of the bill was completely fine with me, and at some point, because of the Senate's role, it went up to the right, and I didn't believe it in anymore, and I didn't vote for this bill.
You thought it became too far right?
It was becoming too far right. And I was always very clear. I think that the left, the center left, which I came from, should be stronger in this country. I think that Raphael Glucksmann did a very good campaign, stand for values. And I will do all my best to avoid having on one side the extreme right, and on the other side a left that is losing its identity. And the identity of the left is to govern. They're talking about le Front Populaire. Front Populaire is the first time the left in the 1930s was able to govern France. And they did so because, of course, they had incredible social impact, but they were responsible to take power, to govern a country. I don't believe in this strategy that the Labour adopted for a few years. That was a dead end, and the one that's trying to push Jean-Luc Mélenchon.
Just a final question for you: what do you think President Emmanuel Macron's legacy will be?
Well, it will depend on what's happening on the July 8th.
Right.
If it's the extreme right, it will be hard to have a positive vision of what he did. But I think, and that's what most of the people in my district are telling me, that for the past 7 years we achieved a few great things. France is economically better than it was 8 years ago. Unemployment is lower than it was 7 years ago. We have lots of investments coming to the country. There are plenty of things that have been positive. Now, in terms of legacy, hopefully, on July 8th, we can keep up with what's been good and give the others, the next generation of leaders, the possibility to do better things.
Christopher Weissberg, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That was Christopher Weissberg,